Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Basketball PH podcast. Enjoy the show.
What it's up, mga paps? It's a back-to-back episode for this weekend. So we're gonna have a full English content right now. This is our sort of like monthly roundtable. So roundtable is the episode wherein we're inviting some solid guests and talk about uh any hot news across NBA. But before that, let me just do a shout out. So shout out to the Daily Sporting. The Daily Sporting was created to keep sport fans to up to date with the latest news and sports information. So they also break down strategies for fantasy football, basketball, baseball, and they love to give you the information you need to win your leagues and probably bets. So actually, that's the special guest that we have for today. So you might not see him yet in your feed, but this is the best time to look at his stuff and content because you're gonna enjoy his show and you're gonna learn a lot from the fantasy basketball side. And even me, I'm actually interested also to learn more about football because in our country we don't usually have those baseballs and footballs leagues. So it's something that I really want to learn more. So without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Taco.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing, brother?
What is up? Yeah. What's up, bro? Doing
Not much,
cool. How
man.
about you?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's morning time out here I'm in New York. As you can see from the hat, I'm repping my boys from the Knicks. We just had a tough loss, but I'm still hyped for fantasy basketball because my teams are doing good even when the Knicks aren't.
Yeah. I mean, Tibbs really turned around New York this season, right?
Yeah, to me, Thibs is the MVP of the league, man, because we're basically the same team we were last year, and we were one of the worst teams in basketball. And he has us playing great right now. So I mean, all shout outs to Tibbs. He's a beast.
Yeah. I mean, some people really don't like how he coaches, but
Hmm.
especially for the young guns. But
Hmm.
I think just to give props to Tibbs, he really gets things done. He
Hmm.
did it back in Chicago. He has some struggles back in Minnesota, but now in New York, I mean, New York is really shocking everyone, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the big thing with Tibbs is just that he's like so like old school. Like, you know what I mean? He plays an old school style. He's physical. He's very, much rooted in fundamentals and defense. And I think New York, even though he's a bit rough on his players and doesn't play the young guys, I think New York likes that because we haven't had that in a while. He reminds us of like our Pat Riley, Jeff Van Gundy days when we were actually good.
Yeah, actually, it's something that is really good for your young guns like
Hmm.
R.J. Barrett and
Yep.
especially Mitch Robinson, who
Hmm.
unfortunately is on the sidelines right now. So it's sort
Yeah.
of like pushing your young guys to really improve.
Yeah. And the Mitchell Robinson injury was so I want to say like devastating because he had just been out with the hand injury. He had been out for a couple of weeks, and then when he comes back, he has that foot injury. And from everything I read from that foot injury, it could become a recurring problem for him throughout his career. But I also think that it killed him for fantasy basketball this year. I don't see him coming back at all to those teams and to those people that had him. I had him in one league, and I definitely felt that pain of losing him. But luckily, like me and that there's a couple of waiver wire gems that you could snag at the center position to help make up for Mitch's loss.
Yeah. And then if you are in a deep league, I guess you have to pick up Tibbs' prodigal son, Taj Gibson. Uncle Taj
Man.
should really give you some help in the rebounds and blocks category.
Yeah, and you know who's been disappointing? Nerds Noel, because Noel, when he took over for Mitch the first time, he played really well. But over his last few games, what I've noticed is that his turnovers have really started to go up, and his production has gone down. He's not averaging that same 10 rebounds, 8 points, and 2 blocks with like 1 turnover and shooting like 60%. That's what you expect from a guy like Noel, filling in for Mitch, but you're not getting that right now. So I think as we get closer to the playoffs, some hard decisions are going to have to be made. It might be a case, like you said, where Taj Gibson might be a better pickup than a Noel just because of the way Tibbs uses him and the way he's been playing lately. Noel's been getting into foul trouble. Noel's also someone that's injury prone. So I do think that's a name that people should keep on their radar in deeper leagues, just in case, because like you said, he's one of Tibbs' favorite players like ever.
Yeah, I mean, he's already creeping to like 20 minutes plus right
Yep.
now. So
Yep.
that's something to really watch out. So
Mhm.
let's move on our topics for this episode. So let's start with the Eastern Conference. So again, here in Roundtable, we were gonna talk about as much as juicy topics as we can. So we have several points in Eastern Conference. Let's start off with one of my favorite players, the Time Lord.
Yes.
Finally, now it's the time. I think Tristan Thompson can, just rest for a while. But what can you say about Time Lord? I mean, earlier today he just give us the usual stats plus 8 dimes. What's up with
Yeah.
that?
I mean, I think if you look at his last game versus Houston last night, it was absolutely remarkable. And I have him on the team that I lost, Mitch. He was the exact guy that I picked up to replace Mitch because I got him, I want to say maybe 2-3 weeks ago before the deadline, before Dice was traded, which opened up so much more minutes for him. But last night he had 20 points on 9 of 9 shooting with 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 blocks, 1 steal, no turnovers. That to me is the definition of what the Time Lord could be. That's what everyone had projected with him with his PER. They're like, if this guy got 30 minutes, he'd be so good, but he only gets 10 and he's able to do so much. And I just think with these minutes coming down the fantasy basketball stretch, this guy could be a game changer. He's he right now in standard 9 category leagues that play with percentages and turnovers, he's ranked 57th. So I mean, I think that just says all you need to know. He's only 71% owned in Yahoo League, so he's available in some leagues if you're looking for him. Probably not the deep leagues, but in some of those shallow leagues, definitely a guy to grab.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, personally, I think Time Lord might not even, get those 30 minutes
No.
in his belt moving forward, because Brad Stevens has been talking about how concerned they are about his injuries. So
Mhm.
probably that's the reason why he was held out for quite some time. But
Mhm.
with Thais out of the rotation, I guess it's not really ideal to play Cornet
Yeah.
or even Mo Wagner in
Mhm.
most of the time. There's a really big difference. Thing about Time Lord is he was actually training with Al Horford in the past in I guess this summer, right?
Mhm.
So it's very notable how improved
It is.
dimes he had in the couple
Mhm.
of games. So we already knew he can play defense, provide
Mhm.
those blocks and steals, and now he's giving a lot of dimes. And probably next season you won't even get Time Lord beyond what around round 6 or 7. He'll definitely get drafted as
Mhm.
early as like round 4, right?
Mhm. And I think two things that I mean for next season, the one thing that I look for Time Lord is what does Boston do? Because I feel like Boston is the type of team where they have a lot of capital and they need to make a move. Because if you look at the team right now, they're trying to make the playoffs, but I think they're like in the 7th or 8th seed. And I think that's one reason why we can see Time Lord unleashed for the end of the season as we hit to the home stretch because they want the playoffs. There's no question about it. Boston wants the playoffs. And I don't think they're going to hold him back at this point in time when he's playing this well. Just because if you're going to make the playoffs, Time Lord is going to be a big part of that rotation. And with how efficient he is in last night with the dimes, I think that was something that we really got to watch. And if next season they give him the full keys, I agree. Fourth, fifth round is going to be a great. He's going to be like what Mitchell Robinson was, maybe just a little bit better. Honestly, because his per 36 numbers are insane between the blocks, the rebounds, and he's really efficient scoring wise. So I definitely, I'm all in on Time Lord, and I agree with you. I think that next season he could be a pretty high pick if they don't get another big man.
Yeah. But maybe before we move to the next point, I'm just gonna ask you, what can you say about that Evan Fournier move? I was really expecting
Ooh.
that Boston will really, do a big swing because I mean, they really need some help. Obviously, um,
Yeah.
uh, Evan Fournier is a good addition.
Mhm.
Definitely, he's a good role player, but I don't think that's the solution for Boston to get back on the upper top four of the Eastern Conference. Like what you've said, they will really need to plan out on probably in the off season to get things going. But what can you say about that move?
That move devastated me because I had Evan Fournier on my one of my main big money fantasy basketball teams, and the numbers that he was doing in Orlando were amazing because he had so much more of a playmaking role where he can distribute for others. He'd have the ball in his hand and be able to create, and he's always been an efficient scorer. But since he's gone to Boston, oh my God, have everything gone off the rails? He's been horrible. Last night, I was looking at him, and until the third quarter or until the fourth quarter, he had done nothing. And in the fourth quarter, he hits like 6 or 7 threes, but he's not giving you any of the extra stats anymore. I think in fantasy, he's scary. I think in real life, it's the best move they can make. There really wasn't that much available on the way on the trading market, and they only gave up like 1 or 2 second round picks for him. So it's not like they gave up a lot of their draft capital assets. So I could see how giving him as a scorer off the bench, especially if a guy like Brown or Marcus Smart goes down again, he could become a really vital contributor. So I think it was almost more like an insurance play that didn't really cost them that much because Boston just has so many picks that they can afford to give up 2 2 second round picks to get a guy like that who can, like we saw last night, get hot and knock down 6 or 7 threes in a quarter for your team as you're getting closer to the playoffs.
Yeah, totally agree. Something to take note of is off the bat, he already got a lot of minutes from Brad Stevens. So it just
Mhm.
shows his purpose for the team. And he's
Mhm.
actually a decent playmaker. Probably not that
Mhm.
good defensively as Marcus Smart. That's the
Yep.
reason why during the trade, everyone thought that Evan Fournier will just like overtake Smart or something. I think Smart is one of the most valuable piece in Boston, and nobody in that roster can do what Smart can do. I mean, it's already evident when Smart was out. I mean, Boston was playing one of their baddest run for quite some time. So that's how valuable Smart is, and it's of course in fantasy, you Smart's value is not dependent on his points. It's
Mhm.
about his peripherals, those field goal percentages. You have to embrace that because that's given already. But
Mhm.
those out of position blocks and those solid steals, you
Mhm.
can't find it like from other players that
Mhm.
can be given on a daily basis, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that when you look at the situation in Boston, I think that, like you said, Marcus Smart is really key to that team. Maybe not as much like in the fantasy aspect, but in the real life aspect, he provides so much for them on the defensive end and those out of position plays where he can guard the best guard on the floor that I don't see him losing the minutes, but I see Kemba Walker as being the one that'll really see the biggest drop off because he hasn't really been that good since he's been there. He's undersized and he isn't scoring. So I could probably see a lot more lineups where they might run a Marcus Smart with a guy like what's his face, Evan Fournier, and then you run Jaylen Brown, and then you run Tatum with the Time Lord. Put Tatum at the 4, put Brown at the 3, have Fournier at the 2, and Smart at the 1 with Time Lord. I think that's a really nasty lineup that we could probably see from the Celtics going forward, which would be interesting to see what they could do with that going into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely agree. And before we move on, for those who are watching this If you don't know Fournier, I won't suggest you to Google Fournier. Okay, I've been telling you that. I posted that in the page, but someone Googled it, and I felt sorry for that dude.
Yeah, I heard. Don't Google his last name. Google it with the first name Evan in front of it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the South Beach.
Mhm,
Um, they now have Victor Oladipo.
mhm.
In his first game, it's fine. There's some steals there. So there's some dimes, but what can we expect with Victor Oladipo?
I think this is going to be a mixed bag. I think what we've seen over him over the last couple of years is one, he hasn't had the ability to stay healthy, and that has directly led to, I would say, a lot of inefficiency on his end between turnovers and low field goal percentages. He's just really not the player that he used to be. On the season, he's hitting 40% from the field. Last season, he had 39% from the field. He's averaging, close to 2.5 turnovers per game. So he's killing you in turnovers. He's killing you with field goal percentage. And in a place like Miami, I don't see him being able to do that much playmaking when you have guys like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, who they really run their offense through. So I think Victor Oladipo is a nice peripheral player. He'll maybe get you some steals, maybe get you some points. But with how inefficient he is, shooting the ball and with his turnovers, I'm not looking forward to him in a fantasy aspect. In a real life aspect, I think it'll be interesting to see how they work with him and how he meshes with the team because he does have good upside, but I just don't know how much they're going to give him the ball to play make.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because since his previous injury, I was surprised how he bounced back, at least for
Mhm,
this season. But I can't still see that spark that he used to play back in Orlando or even in
mhm,
the Thunder. Because for me, Oladipo's game is about his athleticism, and beyond that, it's really hard for him to provide. I mean, the role that he was expecting. He was actually expecting to get a max contract, right? But
mhm,
I think um, it would help him to go to Miami.
mhm,
He could actually show how mature he is right now. Probably take those Goran Dragic role maybe
mhm,
moving forward if Miami will keep him, because Goran is not getting any younger, and I can't see anyone that could replace him. And maybe this is not the one of the popular opinion, but I guess for me, if the Dragon played in the playoffs, it's gonna be a different game against the Lakers. I think how he penetrates, how he plays their usual pick and rolls, because Miami plays that very
mhm,
most of the time. Tyler Hero can do that. Kendrick Nunn can do that. So for me, maybe that's the direction that maybe Victor Oladipo can assume. But
mhm,
fantasy wise, yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's his sort of like a low end upside pick for now. In Dynasty and in Keeper, I might hold on and see how it goes, because Miami does wonders. So it's
mhm,
something that went well for Kelly Olynyk,
mhm,
and went well for even Iguodala is actually
mhm,
contributing right now. So
mhm,
let's see. It's a again, like what Mr. Taco said. It's a mixed bag.
mhm. And I
Yeah.
think
Anything else about the Miami Heat?
yeah, I think that those some of those last guys that you talked about were, some key veterans that, like you said, once they came to Miami, that whole culture there worked wonders. And I think that Gordon Dragic is a big part of that culture, and I think that's why they spent a lot to keep him. And the only guy that they were going to move him for was trying to get like a Kyle Lowry as a playmaker, but instead they ended up with Oladipo, and that makes me more look at guys like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson and Iguodala as those would be the guys minutes he might end up taking and cutting into, going forward. Because when we look at Hero's really been on a downcline this season. His shooting has been down and his production has been down. He's not offering enough, I feel like, on the court where they may start to see what they have in Oladipo. They're not going to move off of Hero, obviously. He's in their long-term future, but right now, Miami's goal is to make it back to the finals. Like after what they did last year, now people are looking at them. They are going to have to go through teams like the Sixers and the Nets, but they are one of the few teams that are built to do that. And Bam Adebayo is really starting to get rolling. Jimmy Butler's finding his groove. If they can get anything out of Victor Oladipo and he can slide in to one of those struggling guys on a nightly basis, and you could ride the high hand between Duncan Robinson and Hero, I think that makes Miami scary in the playoffs, but it makes it scary to see what happens in fantasy basketball because that situation is very fluid as we get into the finals, and playoffs are going to start in 4 weeks. So you don't really want those kind of situations when you're trying to win a league.
Yeah, and just to add, for me, one of their low-key addition was Trevor Ariza. I think they've been missing Jay Crowder's defense pretty bad. Kelly Olynyk did a decent job, but I guess it really is still lacking with respect on the 3 and D expectation. So I think Trevor Ariza is doing a pretty good job. He he's a well rested player.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been sitting in the OKC's bench for quite some time.
And
So
how many wings do they have over there? Because now you're looking at Hero, you're looking at Oladipo, you're looking at Ariza, you're looking at Iguodala, you're looking at Duncan. Their wings are totally loaded, and then you still have Butler, so they are loaded at the wing. So I think, like you said, Ariza is a great fit for them. He defends, he can space the floor. He's a solid vet that gets into it. Like he's not one of those soft guys. Like he will get. He's like a Jimmy Butler like type ferocity, and I think that's good for this team.
yeah, I agree. I guess the reason why they got Ariza was the initial target was to get Rudy Gay, but it didn't work well.
Yeah.
It would have like made a lot of difference, but Ariza is also a really solid vet that, like what you've said, can do play solid games both sides of the court. So now let's talk about the Orlando Magic, wherein you already mentioned earlier how good Evan Fournier has been for like the start of the season until now, aside for those rests and injuries. But there's a new captain in down. Probably the tweet of the year, Terrence Ross being the captain. He already shot like attempted 21 shots last game. So I'm really happy for Terrence Ross. He's been really steady since he came from Toronto going to Orlando. He was sort of like their 3 and D guy for quite some time in fantasy. If you need steals and snipes for the past season, he's been that low upside but decent player that you'll always have within your roster. And sometimes he explodes, sometimes he gets eggs, but he's still very good health. Again, in the low end of your bench or end of the bench player. But something that I would like to talk about aside from Terrence Ross is the young guns. The new acquisitions weren't playing well, maybe because they haven't practiced yet. The minutes aren't there. But one of the young guns that I'm quite excited and interested is Chuma Okeke. What can you say about this dude? He's uh, ever since they got Chuma, he was the handcuff for Ross or Fournier, but apparently Fournier was dealt. So I guess they should stick with Okeke rest of the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at what he's doing, he's been effective and efficient. He's shooting 47% from the field just in the last month, 91% from the free throw, getting you over a 3 a game, getting you almost a block. I mean, almost a steal a game, half a block. He's been really solid, to be honest with you. And I think that he's going to be one of these guys as we head down the stretch. He could be a real difference maker if you manage to get him or if you get a chance to get him going forward. I think in real life, we're going to have to see how he plays once he's now starts getting the focus of some defenses and they start understanding how he plays, because I don't think there's that much tape on him. But Okeke has been really solid so far, and I think he's going to be one of the more interesting plays for the Magic. And I'm also interested to see what they do with Mo Bamba, because Mo Bamba now with the center position being cleared up with Vujovic, he also is going to have a shot to shine. But he can't stay out of foul trouble and he can't stay healthy. So I don't know how much I trust him. And Okeke seems to be the one that's really benefiting the most from the Vujovic departure.
Yeah. Like what you said, I haven't seen Bamba really fit. I was talking about him in the past. I mean,
Mhm,
in the previous episode, wherein
mhm,
he's like Aiton early this season. You know, we're
mhm,
expecting big, but there seem to be fit. I mean,
mhm,
if you check how Bamba plays, after a few minutes, his breathing is
mhm,
really heavy. So probably that's the reason why Clifford has been, benching him. There were
mhm,
instances wherein Vooch rests, but they haven't played Mo for quite some time. So it just shows how they think of Mo, and
mhm,
probably also how their coach, has short leashes for rookies.
mhm,
Another thing that I want to talk about here is Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell Carter Jr. was thought of like the Al Horford of the new generation for quite some time,
mhm,
but Chicago haven't, seen that. Probably there are players that plays well because of change of scenery. Should
mhm.
we expect that for Wendell Carter because he really played well when Cambridge was out?
Well, I mean, I think that when you look at Wendell Carter Jr., he was like, I want to say like the seventh overall pick by the Bulls when he was drafted. He was a top 10 selection when he came. Maybe he was number four. I forget exactly where he was drafted, but I know he was drafted by the Bulls high. And I know that when he came out of college, a lot of people liked his tape and liked his potential. And if we look at what he did in his last game, like you said, with Birch out, he shot 61% from the field, 21 points, 12 rebounds, one block, only two turnovers, went 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Perennially, he's a good free throw shooter, a good scorer on the inside, solid source of of rebounds and points. Isn't the most of the blocks, but he looks like he's stepping it up. And I think his potential is almost sky high when you look at a kid like that who's so efficient, effective, and athletic. I'm really interested to see what he could do if they had some of the playmakers like Fultz and the other kids that they have. So next season, I'm really going to be high, I think, on a guy like Carter with having that off season, with them having their playmakers back, because Magic got devastated by injuries before the season even started. I mean, Fultz was gone almost like the first week, and then Cole Anthony's been out in and out of the lineup. I think that really hurts them. But I like Wendell Carter Jr. I think he has great upside. I think he's going to be the one playing over Mo Bamba. I think he's the future center down there with the Magic.
Yeah, and actually he can play that Vooch role because
Mm-hmm.
he has,
Decent range.
some passing skills, but that
Yep.
that haven't you know utilized in Chicago Bulls. So
Yep.
probably the last thing that I would like to say about Orlando is there was a last question in one of our Q&A wherein someone asked me
Mm-hmm.
on who I think is I'm high on breaking out next year, and I
Mm-hmm.
told them it's gonna be Jonathan Isaac. I think Jonathan
Mm-hmm.
Isaac is definitely
Mm-hmm.
gonna go nuts next year.
Mm-hmm.
Which is gone. Evan
Mm-hmm.
Fournier is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Otto Porter sticks, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Jonathan Isaac showed us last season what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
He is a fantasy gold. So I guess for those who doesn't know what he offers, you're missing a lot because the combination of stats that he provides is really, really something. As almost I mean, it's somewhat better uh over Triple J because Jonathan Isaac is some kind of more efficient, but last season he already showed us that if usage is if he got that usage, he's not afraid to shoot. So that's was lacking back in his rookie season. Now with that confidence and with him probably the main piece of Orlando, I guess is we're expecting a lot next season.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that we have to also realize with Isaac is they already signed into an extension. So I think that
Yeah.
shows how much the front office in Orlando thinks that he's going to be a centerpiece of this team. So I totally agree with you. Jonathan Isaac is going to be one of those players next season that players are going to have to, if you forgot about him, you're going to be missing out on one of the best players all around, especially at that forward position, giving you those threes, those blocks, being an efficient player. And with him being so young, he's only 23 years old going into his 24th season. He should hopefully recover from this injury well since he's young enough. and we've yet to see his physical prime. So I think that he's a guy that next season will be primed for a breakout.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited about him.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about LA. But apparently, LA didn't went in the Western Conference. It's now went to the Brooklyn Nets. So
Mhm.
I'm a Spurs fan. I'm a really, really solid Spurs fan. Initially, I didn't like when LA went to my team, but as time goes, I really appreciate what he brings, what he did, how he adjusted. That goes as well with DeMar DeRozan. So it's like a bittersweet, relationship with me, but San Antonio Spurs are known to let go of players in the best possible way, right? I mean, when Tony Parker wanted to play more minutes, they eventually let him go to one of his idols, to Michael Jordan and his Charlotte Hornets, right?
Yep.
So I guess this was LA's wish that was fulfilled. I don't know what he could bring in Brooklyn, because personally I still think um for me I can't say he is washed, but on how the NBA is playing right now, it's gonna be hard for me to understand what he can provide in Brooklyn that Nick Claxton cannot provide. I mean, they have BG, they have the Andre Jordan, they have LaMarcus Aldridge. Personally, I still think Nick Claxton is the best front court that they have. I don't know if they realize that, but I mean, he's young. Obviously, he has the legs, he has the athleticism, he has the energy, but he might not have the experience. So I was thinking that this move probably is for the playoffs, not for the regular season. But at some point in time, it will Nash will realize how valuable Nick Claxton is. How about you, Mr. Taco? What's your thought about that LMA signing?
I think that that's real interesting. I like I said, I am from New York, so I get to hear all the rumblings and bumblings and all that good stuff out here. And a lot of people are hyped on Nick Claxton. They think he has that good upside. They love his shot blocking potential. They love his rim running potential. And you still have DeAndre Jordan there. But I think the most interesting thing is that last night, DeAndre Jordan got put on the bench for LaMarcus Aldridge. And to me, LaMarcus Aldridge reminds me of, like, he's one of those players, him and DeMar DeRozan, and I think this is one of the things that hurt the Spurs. They would be great players if they were one era before this. If they were in that 90s era, if they were around when Chris Webber and what's his face, Rip Hamilton, and all these guys were in the league, they would fit perfectly. They would be that mid-range guy. They could pass. They could play make. They would be dynamic. But in today's NBA, it's so much more predicated on being able to hit the three and take it to the rack and being able to create, that it's gotten away from those mid-range guys or those guys that are really efficient in the in-between area. And I think having a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge really gives him some versatility, because Claxton isn't the shooter and playmaker that Aldridge is. And I think that's the one place where, when you think about it, okay, how is the best way the Nets could beat you? They're just going to outscore you every night. Because when you're running a lineup and you have, LaMarcus Aldridge, and then you're running, Kevin Durant, and then you have, Kyrie and Harden, who are you defending on that night? Especially when you have a guy like Aldridge who can come out and hit the three. He can hit the mid-range. He could rebound. He could pass and create for others, which is something that's really underrated, his playmaking abilities. And we started to see it some last night. I believe he had like 6 assists last night. For the team. So he's able to do a lot of different things, I feel like, in comparison to a Claxton and a Jordan, where I feel like they're more like rim running, defensive type players, where you want to run the pick and roll with them. You want them, guarding the paint. But a guy like DeMarcus Aldridge can slide into that power forward position and play alongside of Claxton, or he can move to the center position and let Kevin Durant come into the power forward, and you really then have a lot of space on the floor. And by creating so much space, I think it opens it up for guys like Harden and Kyrie to get to the basket without having to worry about that center clogging the lane and trying to come over and block their shot. Because if that center does come over and leave LaMarcus, who's like maybe posted in the corner, he's knocking down that corner three. So I think he's a great fit for them, especially in the playoffs, because he gives them some diversity at that forward spot. Same thing with Blake. I think that Blake may be a little more far gone than LaMarcus, just because LaMarcus was never based on his athleticism. He was always based on his cerebral skills, his playmaking skills, and his ability to get that feel for the floor.
Yeah. I think probably the change of scenery will also help because
Yeah.
Blake just dunked a few games ago
Yeah.
after an
He's
eternity
back.
in Detroit. So it
Definitely.
just shows that some players really play well depending on the situation.
Mhm.
Something that I'm quite you know I don't quite trust about LMA as much as I love him
Mhm.
is playing outside of his mid range. I mean, he started shooting threes in the Spurs, and
Mhm.
it's really bad. It's something that he needs to polish. But once he does that, it's gonna be a threat. I would agree with that. Thing that I really hated the most is when the Spurs played New Orleans Pelicans. And then I saw Lamarcus Aldridge doesn't want to guard Zion Williamson.
Oh, I
And
don't think anyone does.
and then the ball fell, and Lamarcus Aldridge can't even, get down on the floor and get the ball. So I
Mhm.
was thinking, wow, I mean, is this fatherhood coming in? But like what you've said, in his past game, he's really comfortable. I think it's
Yep.
it's a matter of, playing better because in the Spurs, he was playing with a lot of young guns.
Yep.
Now in Brooklyn, maybe the players would understand what he is and what he brings to the table because it's gonna be a different pace. It's gonna be a different place. Like what you've said, Brooklyn will definitely outscore you. That's how
Yep.
strong Brooklyn is,
Mhm.
and they will embrace that. Thing
Mhm.
about Brooklyn is, when healthy, they can also defend.
Yeah.
Harden is a low key defender. KD can defend. Kyrie Irving got a lot of blocks in several games right now. So don't underestimate that. I guess it's probably about them playing together because that's
Yep.
the only thing that they haven't done for quite some time.
And I
People
think
are asking me, will Harden rest? Will Kyrie rest? Well, obviously Kyrie is already resting back to
yep.
back. But for Harden, I think Brooklyn will definitely want to see them play together.
Yep.
Everything is almost clear aside from them playing together. They want to see how it goes before the playoffs. I guess that's one of their top priority. Do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely do agree. And one thing also with Harden now, he's starting to have some hamstring issues. So I could see them start to monitor his usage a little bit, especially once KD comes back, where maybe what they'll do is they'll run two of them at a time. So you'll have either KD and Harden or KD and Kyrie or Harden and Kyrie all combining, and they'll maybe give one of them a game off every now and then and I would say maybe like the final 2 weeks before the season. But I think getting into that, they'll run some of these lineups together just to see kind of what they do have, like you said. But I think that's the beautiful part about Brooklyn is they could really stagger their playmakers. So this way, always at no matter for all 48 minutes between KD, Kyrie, or Harden, you're gonna have an elite playmaker, elite scorer on the field or on the court. So I definitely think that going forward, you're gonna see automatically one of them on the floor at all times. And I think that integrating all of them isn't really going to be that hard because of how well KD plays off the ball. KD is one of the most willing superstars to not take the ball and not be the main focal point, but to hit his shots in the corner. And he's so efficient and effective that he doesn't need 30 shots to get 30 points like Kobe used to do back in the day, or some of these other guys. He will take 15 shots, get 25 points. He'll have a couple of free throws. He'll be shooting 50%. And like you said, he's an underrated defender. And I think that that's going to be something that they need. I'm excited to see what they do. I think that as we do get closer, they are going to have to rest some of these guys, especially with Kyrie's hamstring. I mean, not with Kyrie, with Harden's hamstring, and with Kyrie already resting. I think the final 2 weeks of the season is going to be interesting to see how they play it. Until then, I think everything is fine. But I think that's when I would really start to worry, and that might be near the finals for some people. So that's definitely a situation to monitor going forward.
Yeah, totally agree. And now let's talk about a team that wasn't playing good
Yeah.
or playing well all season long. Let's talk about DC. Well, Westbrook has some emerging sort of career nights in the past,
Mhm.
especially that one of the top
That
triple
triple double.
double that he had. But I mean, as of the moment,
Mhm.
aside for that Stephen A argument, um, the main question in my mind is: will they do a run and have themselves play in the tournament, or tank? Because personally, I would suggest they tank, and I was expecting them to do some good trades because um if they stick with Westbrook and Beal without any solid backups, they will definitely be that mediocre team in the East for what, 3 or 4 more years.
Mhm.
I like Rui, but I don't think he's that rookie that will take them to heights. Maybe Danny, but he hasn't been playing well as well. He's still raw. So, what's your take about it? Will they try to be in the play-in tournament, or Bill's already injured right now? It's they have to decide, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they still have time to tank.
I think that with the Wizards, they're in such a weird position because you have some aging veterans. Mainly, I'm looking at a guy like Westbrook and Beal, who they're in their primes. But how long are you going to keep them in their primes without the rest of the team being good enough to get them anywhere? I mean, right now they have a 17-30 record, so they're 16 games behind the first place Nets. But when you look at it, like I'll look at a team like my Knicks, who are sitting in the seventh seed. They're 24-25. The Wizards right now are 7 games behind the Knicks in order to because I believe that the Bulls will make it. I believe the Pacers, the Celtics, and realistically, if the Wizards are going to make it, they're going to have to come for the Knicks spot or the Bulls spot. Those are going to be the two spots that I think that could be available. And the question is, are they going to go for it? I think so. Westbrook is not the kind of guy that's going to sit there and tank. He's not going to let him be taken out. He's going to want to play every game. Can they win? I don't know, because Westbrook is going for it for his stats and his numbers. Rui's been getting hot, but I don't trust Rui. I mean, like I said, last couple of weeks he's really started to show up and that potential that he's had. You know, he's really been scoring efficiently. He's been getting 20 points almost on a couple of nights in a row. So I like Rui. I think that the loss of Thomas Bryant really hurt them hard because Thomas Bryant is a floor stretching big who could block shots and is really good for them. So losing him, I think, really hurt them for the season. I think having him back next year will be good. I think Bertans has been a huge disappointment for them as well because he's not really able to give them the floor spacing at an efficient rate. But I think they're going to go for it because a guy like Westbrook is not going to want to sit in his hands. He goes for it every night. And realistically, they're only 2 games behind the Bulls for the 10th spot. So, and 4 games behind the Pacers for the 9th spot. So they definitely, I think, will have a shot to make it. The question is going to be, can they pull it together enough? We know Westbrook is going to go all in. So that's why I don't think that they're going to tank or try to get, towards the lottery, even though this lottery, and as a Knicks fan, I'll say this in the beginning, personally, yes, we want to see our team play good. Yes, I want to see good defense. Yes, I want to see the kids evolve, but this was not the season for us to be mediocre where we almost make the playoffs in a ninth seed when you have a guy like Cade Cunningham and some of these other prospects that are coming out of this draft, because this draft class is loaded and there's a lot of talented guards in it. So as a Knicks fan, I'm not so mad if we don't make the playoffs because we get a shot at a Cade Cunningham. Would I like to make the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. You don't want your team to miss the playoffs, but this is a great draft class. And if the Wizards can miss the playoffs, it'll benefit them. But I think they're going to go for it.
Yeah, that's the reason why before the trade deadline, I was expecting that Washington will do a big swing. I mean, I was telling everyone that this trade deadline might be. I was expecting that people will. I mean, teams will definitely move. Contenders will want to get good players because this is one of the best season wherein there is no main team that is gonna crush everyone. I don't think LA's Lakers are that team as of the moment. They aren't healthy, right?
Mhm.
This is also the season wherein the upcoming rookies are very good. So the contenders will definitely want to win, and then
Uh-huh.
the tanking teams will definitely want to get that solid spot in the draft. So I
Yep.
guess there's gonna be more move probably in the off season.
Yeah. I think
And
that.
I don't know. For Washington, you're right. That's the personality of Westbrook. But personally, I think they don't need to go all in to lose.
I agree. I
Even
agree.
if Westbrook plays hard out, I don't think they're gonna win a lot of games. So it's
No,
sort of like tanking by not showing everyone that you're tanking.
but the other thing that they need to do is they need to show that they have some sort of something working to keep Beal there. Because
Yeah,
if they, let's just say, they tank out, they keep going this bad, what makes Beal want to stay the following season, knowing that okay, now we're just going to get another rookie, it's going to be the same thing, and we're going over and over and over in this repetitive cycle. So I think that's a name that we're going to have to watch in the off season because everything I'm reading now is he has a lot of say in the Wizards organization. They consult him for a lot of moves, almost on a LeBron James level, but they have not been performing anywhere near a LeBron James team. So my question is, how much longer does Beal have in Washington? And I think if they end up, like really tanking out the rest of the season, I think it puts Beal on a path to be on a different team next season. If they don't make the playoffs and they do really bad, Bradley Beal more than likely is on a different team next year.
yeah. I was expecting the whole storylines in the mainstream to be just like a smokescreen because,
Yep.
like what you've said, I really think Bill needs a reason to stay.
Yep.
That's also the reason why I thought Bulls will do a big swing, which they did,
Yep.
because Levine also needs that reason.
Yep. And I think
Levine
that's where
was
they got Vujovic.
yeah, Levine was unhappy in before the trade deadline, so they need to keep Levine, and I think
Mhm.
they really did a good job getting Vujovic. At least Levine knows Bulls will definitely want to pave some way for him to get comfortable and win because he
Yep.
wants to be that star.
Yep. And what's crazy though is since the trade though, they've lost three in a row. They've lost six in a row overall. So even though they made the trade so far, it hasn't meshed. And I'm looking at guys like Beal and I'm looking at guys like Levine as the perfect guy for the Knicks. Because we desperately need a wing who can create his own shot and he can hit the three and help others. So I think those are two of the names that are on top of the Knicks list. So if they're unhappy in the offseason, I could see New York making a massive trade for one of those two guys. Because now for the Knicks, I feel like adding a piece like that to a Randall and an RJ makes this really interesting. And then you sign a free agent because we'll have cap space. So I do think, like you said, these teams need to show these young guys that they're about winning and they could put the pieces around them to be at least competitive. Otherwise, like you said, why wouldn't they try to force a way out? And like you said, with what Tibbs has done, I think he's put New York back on the map. He's been that superstar that we've needed.
Man, you have Reggie Bullock, man. You don't need another.
Man, listen, he's still New York, baby. We repping.
But no offense to Reggie. I mean, he's
No,
really doing a good job
yeah,
being that
he has his
sniper
moment.
of yeah,
I'll
yeah.
I'll say this: he's been better since January ish. Because at the beginning of the season, oh man, we had problems. We didn't like him.
I really thought it'll get to a point that you'll play Frank Ntilikina a lot of minutes. But
Man, I can't lie.
luckily, you have quickly.
I
Quickly is a really promising young stud.
Yeah. I'm a Frankie Ntilikina stan, though. I'm not gonna lie. That's my boy. I think he has some upside. His biggest problem to me is confidence. This kid has no confidence. So, like if you look at him when he plays, he'll come up the floor and he's immediately going to the corner to pass off the ball and a dribble handoff. He's not attacking the rim. He's not looking to play make for others and create his own shot. He's very passive. I think in an off ball role, like if he played Reggie Bullock's role, I think he'd be really good. Um, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a Frank Ntilikina stan. I think that kid has untapped potential that he doesn't know how to figure out how to get to.
Yeah, he was really people are really high on him, and he
Yeah,
has really good skills. But
yeah,
I guess at some point he needs that Markel Fultz move,
yeah,
wherein when Fultz went to Orlando, Orlando
yeah,
really gave faults to bounce back.
Yeah.
Probably that's also the same case with
Yep.
Dennis Smith Jr. in
Yep.
Detroit. So
Well,
maybe
I
something
don't
like
know.
that.
I think Dennis Smith Jr. might be done because with his size and his inability to shoot, I don't see because he spent this whole summer working with Sharif Abdul Rahim, a really good shooter out here in New York, and he didn't go anywhere with it. His shot didn't get any better. They gave him minutes. He couldn't do anything. He doesn't look good. He doesn't defend. I think he wants to just be, forever just, J. Cole's friend and maybe hop up on a couple rap albums. But I think Dennis Smith Jr.'s career is on the outs. Like he's almost done.
Yeah, this is his last,
Yeah.
run to be an NBA player,
Yeah.
and
And
he
now that
has
Killian
some good
Hayes is back.
competition in Saban Lee, right?
Yeah. And now that Killian Hayes is back, how much time is he really going to get? Because you
Yeah,
got to play Killian.
Detroit is all in on Killian. I don't think
Yep.
the moment that Diallo works, I
Mhm.
think that's the low key thing because
Yeah.
they need that scoring punch that can do the off guard play,
Yep.
and that's the thing that Dennis Smith wants. But
Mhm.
apparently they got Diallo and they also
Yeah.
have Josh Jackson.
Yep.
So I don't know.
And you
Those
still
guys
have
can play.
Grant. They,
Yeah,
they they spent big money on Grant too, so I think that that'll be really interesting to see what they do because between Grant and Diallo over his last few games, when he plays, he's been playing really good, but they're resting him like every other day, so that's kind of annoying for my fantasy team. But when he's playing, Diallo's looking good.
yeah. Diallo and Josh Jackson are the names that I'm calling
Yep,
those players that are inefficiently good because
yep,
they tend to be inefficient but they are really really good.
yep. And field goal punt teams, they're amazing.
Yeah, and if you also have RJ Barrett and then you also have I guess maybe Westbrook, then your team will definitely kill it.
Yeah.
So let's now go in the Western Conference. Um, What about there's a song to not forget about Dre, but I guess Dre forget to exercise before he played in the LA. He's like huffing and puffing there. What's
Yo,
up with Dre, bro?
man, Dre Drummond is an interesting guy because there was so like the Knicks were, and I bring up the Knicks because we were a team that were linked to him probably the most, I want to say, throughout the season, throughout the trade deadline. Everyone was saying the Knicks were going to get him, the Knicks, because he's a local guy. It didn't make sense for us. But I have never heard so much slander toward this man. Everyone talks about how he's the least efficient big man scoring. His effective field goal percentage at the rim is horrible. But I think that just for him, he's in a good situation here. I think if he can get healthy, because in his debut, he had that toe injury. Apparently, his toenail like came off or something. It's bad with his foot, so he's out immediately for the Lakers once they get him. The Lakers are running a mash unit right now. LeBron's out, AD's out. They signed Drummond, he's out. I think that if he's healthy, he could be good. They say he's in better shape than he was in Detroit. So he's actually cut weight despite his lack of weight.
Surprisingly,
Yeah.
surprisingly.
So I think it'll be interesting. I think for Dre Drummond, he realizes one thing. This playoffs is going to really define what he gets in the free agent market. Because if he has a really bad time there, he doesn't look good, he doesn't engage defensively, he's not getting a decent contract.
He's gonna be the next Hassan Whiteside or
Yes.
probably this generation's Roy Hibbert. Just
Yeah.
because Cubs got him really really cheap. That shows how even Detroit values Andre Drummond. And as much as Hassan Whiteside played well in Portland, he also have a very very cheap contract there in Sacramento. So it
Yep.
just shows how the NBA really wants that stretch big sort of
Yes.
Jokic type.
Yep.
If you're like a big that defends, you need to be like Gobert good to be to
Yep.
stay in the
Or like a
NBA
Time
right
Lord.
now.
Like
Yeah, our
Time
Time
Lord, where
Lord.
you're just super efficient.
Yeah, but thing about Time Lord is he's super agile for a big.
Yep.
He passes and he
Yep.
has low key improved his mid range shot. So
Yeah.
you have to be that type of a big if you really want to stay. But
Mhm.
I think Drummond tried to be that one, but it really messes his place, especially in fantasy. He tried to shoot threes,
No,
and it,
that was so
it really
bad.
didn't work out.
Because it kills his field goal percentage, and he wasn't hitting any three. So it's like you're taking all these extra threes, and a guy that's supposed to be shooting like 55, 56% is shooting, under 50, and then he's not giving you the threes, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, just be you. Don't try to be something you're not. And if you want to work on that three, sure, but don't make it such a big staple. But I think the reason why he's doing it is because, like you said, the NBA values so much that stretch big. And I think that's even why a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, even though he's towards that Washington and he isn't the best from the 3-point range, but he can hit about 35% from three, which is good enough, especially from a stretch big, that he'll open up the floor enough. And I think that's why a guy like Drummond, I think you made the perfect analogy. Hassan Whiteside is where he could end up going, because Hassan Whiteside was really good. Like, he was really like the differences between a Whiteside and a Drummond are very small. Like, they're virtually the same player, and he's heading down the Hassan Whiteside path.
Yeah, definitely. I hope he bounces back. Personally, I think the moment he gets those minutes and probably be, shows the Lakers that he can really play big minutes without puffing, because his
Yep.
breathing is really seems like he's not that fit. So once that's all gone, I think he'll be a good fantasy player all the way and could probably win you, the playoffs, because AD is sort of like still weeks away.
Yep.
There's some optimism in it, especially with LBG as well. But I don't think they will just let AD and maybe LBJ can play more, but let AD play hard minutes off the bat. They'll
No.
definitely be cautious about it, because without AD or without LeBron, I don't
Yeah.
think they can really play well in the playoffs, even in
No.
regular season.
And everything from what I've seen is LeBron is still like maybe 3 to 4 or 5 weeks away. He's in a 3 to 5 range, which puts him pretty much near the end of the fantasy playoffs in most setups. So I think that you might have to look at going into a fantasy playoffs with no LeBron and no AD. And I think that does set up Drummond. But the question is, how does teams who had Drummond survive him sitting on the bench for and not even being on a DL or anything like that? Just a dead roster spot for almost like a month, almost a month and a half. Like, were you able to win enough to make it there? And then he comes in and he's immediately hurt. Like, if you had Dre Drummond, you might be in a bad spot to even make the playoffs.
I agree. And it's really frustrating that after the wait, he actually forgot to cut his nails, and now he's already out. So it really
Yeah.
sucks. I
Yeah.
don't have Draymond, but I was imagining, oh man, if you've waited this long, and the only thing, and you're expecting a big line from him, and then he forgot to cut his toes.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Could you imagine you waited all that time to finally put him back in your lineup and he's out after like 5 minutes because of a toenail? Like, come on. It's as bad as it gets.
Okay, let's talk about something positive. Let's talk about Aaron Gordon. For quite some time, Aaron Gordon is that player that,
Mhm.
well, because of his solid dunks, people in the fantasy world, at least those casual managers, thinks that he's good. He can do stuff, but in reality, in nine cats, he's really that borderline top 100 player for season after season after season, because he's inefficient. He doesn't provide that good defensive stat. He's not consistent. He does that in some games, but he's not consistent. He's not a super scorer, because they got Vooch back in Orlando. The only thing that really interests us, it was his play back in the bubble, wherein he did a point forward role. So after that, I was thinking, what would Aaron Gordon offer in the Denver Nuggets? So then, what popped in my mind was Denver Nuggets will definitely want him to be that Jeremy Grant of the future. He's athletic. I guess he could, improve his defensive stats, and which he's already showing. So, how about you, bro? What can you think about Aaron Gordon? Could he redeem his value? I guess at least for next season, because he's really playing well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Gordon is in a situation now where it's going to be really interesting because the Denver Nuggets are a team that usually plays through the Joker. So Joker is usually setting everything up, creating for everyone else. But I feel like Aaron Gordon almost runs in a similar way where he'll, hold the ball and almost play make for others or play make for himself, trying to take it to the rack, trying to take it to the rim, create that shot. He's a decent 3-point shooter, but he isn't the best 3-point shooter. I think, like you said, he fits good in that Jeremy Grant type role if he can maintain his defensive consistency. I think that if he continues to get the burn that he's been getting, he's going to be a solid player going into the playoffs because just looking over his last couple of games, he's been getting, like his last game was really good. 14 points, six rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 1 3-pointer. Like if he's doing that on a nightly basis for them, you're happy as a fantasy owner, and the Denver Nuggets are really happy as a team. And I don't think it's that hard to envision him getting, maybe a 12, 4-4 with maybe a block and a steal a game with the way that they would use him. So I think that his value is going to come, like you said, on the defensive end. Can he put in those defensive stats like a Jeremy Grant to elevate his other numbers to make him, usable in fantasy? And I think in real life, he may be a little bit underrated at this point now with his skill set because he's pretty big and he has great athletic abilities. So you would expect someone like that with proper motivation, now not being on a Magic team that's never competing for anything, or you're in a first round versus the Bucks where you're going to lose, but you're going to give it your all. I think that now when you're a team with the Nuggets, who currently are the 5th team in the West in the three-way tie with the 2 LA teams to possibly move up into the top 3, I think that has to motivate him. And I expect big things actually out of Gordon coming out of this season, coming into the final stretch. I think him and Michael Porter Jr. are going to be 2 of the biggest impacts for this team as they get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially now that the the 2 power forward players that they've been using was Uncle Paul and
Yeah.
Michael Green. And
Yeah.
I would definitely take Aaron Gordon over those
Yep.
2. Probably in some certain situation, I would take Millsap. But I mean, moving forward, that should be Aaron Gordon's spot.
Yep.
Something that I would also add in Denver before we move forward.
Mhm.
Would you be wary if some of their player rest once they lock in that top 4-5 seed?
Well, I think here's the 2 things that with the Nuggets that we have to look at. One, right now, they are 7 games behind the Jazz for the number 1 seed and 4 games behind the Suns for the number 2 seed. So I could see them making a play for one of those 2 positions, which would give them less inkling to rest their players. And then the other thing that we have to look at is Joker is going possibly for the MVP. So I don't know if
Yeah.
they want to rest him too much and get him because I would say that it's probably between him and Harden for the award. And I think that the way Harden left the Rockets, I think opens it up even more for Jokic, where if the Nuggets can be a top 3 seed in the West and he's leading them and he has the numbers that he has this season, which is, absolutely ridiculous. I don't think they will bench so much them. I think they'll let the guys like the Joker play because, they're playing for higher seeding. Getting that 2nd seed, I think, is going to be huge because it'll really help you avoid a team like the Lakers who might be sliding down. And I think that, getting a guy like Jokic at MVP is great for the whole city and for the organization. So I definitely think that they may be one of the few teams where I'm not too worried about them resting players. Maybe Michael Porter Jr. is someone that I worry about them resting because he does have those injury concerns. And Michael Porter Jr. is going to be one of the biggest reasons why they go far in the playoffs because that dude is right now on fire. Like, wow.
Yeah. Finally, he's at peace with their coach because
Yeah.
Mike
Yeah.
Malone has been, that kind of strict dad that is not giving him a
Yeah.
short
You
leash.
got to earn it.
But the management wants him to play, and I don't think Mike Malone has something to say about it.
Yeah.
And Mike Malone was on his way to get fired last season, and his ass was saved just because of that run
Playoff.
they had against the LA Clippers. So
Oh
You
well,
know,
the Jazz one was too good too. They were down
yeah,
3-1.
yeah, actually, yeah,
And they were like, no, we're down 3-1. We still got this. And then they did that to the Clippers again. It was just like, whoa. But I agree with you, man. MPJ last season, you could see the frustration on his face, especially in those games versus the Lakers, where he just wants to be in so bad. And you see him and Kuzma. Like, man, I don't know what happened between him and Kuzma. Did they have an ex-girlfriend or something similar? Because man, they were going at each other angry. Like, yo, like it was great watching. It was great.
yeah. I really miss those type of plays that
Yeah.
you really see on a daily basis back in the 90s, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
or as long as you're not in my team, I'm gonna go at you super,
Yep.
super hard
Yep.
compared to this season. But going back, I really agree with the MVP storyline because personally, I would really assume Jokic and probably Embiid as those top candidates that really go hard for the MVP. I was
Mhm.
telling about Embiid that as long as he's 100%, given that they've already traded Bradley, which is his boy and one of the great backup centers for the Philly, it just shows that he's healthy. And the moment he plays, I think he won't have any restrictions. The restrictions that he will have is he won't play back to back probably, but he
Mhm.
will definitely go hard for that MVP, and that goes as well with Jokic. And despite that Aaron Gordon addition, I don't think it will mess up the system because Aaron Gordon played a lot with his Balkan buddy Vuce, and they almost play the same. So I don't think there's much adjustment for Aaron Gordon. The most adjustment that he'll do is what you've said is he won't do much of that playmaking chore because um you have Jamal Murray, you have Will Barton getting wanting the ball, and you also have Facundo who's really, really sneaky dude that brings in that veteran type of play down the
Yep.
line. Only needs that 15 minutes of solid play wherein he'll be sneaky enough to get those crucial steals or shoot those crucial snipes and give the a solid pass because he was really a good vet back in Europe.
Yep. And I think speaking to that point, um, last night though we saw for the first time, like I want to see probably one of the Joker's worst stat lines. Where I mean, obviously we can't get too nervous yet because it hasn't happened that much. But last night he went 6 of 16 for 37% from the field. He only had 14 points. He had 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 3-pointers. So he did his thing still, but in comparison to what he normally does, I really do think it's going to be interesting to see how Aaron Gordon affects him in some places because now that you have another scorer between Murray, Gordon, Porter, and Jokic being so unselfish and taking care of his teammates, um, I just do wonder a little bit about that for his scoring. And obviously, he's still going to be one of the top 5 players. He's not a guy that you take out of your lineup. He's a great guy. But when we're splitting hairs and we're riding a guy to the championship, I do think that we might see a little dip in Joker's numbers coming up. And we've only seen it for like 1 or 2 games so far. So obviously, the jury's still out. We still have to see how they play it. But last night's game versus the Clippers definitely disappointed a little bit. And I don't know if it's the matchup or just everyone getting used to the new offense, but that's something that I'm definitely watching as we get close to the playoffs.
Yeah, true that. Because one main reason why Jokic is on top of his game, especially in fantasy, is his efficiency. He
Mhm,
hasn't been this efficient for the past season. So,
mhm.
will it be sustainable? It seems like sustainable for like half of the season right now.
Yep.
But as you have said, it's quite declining. Probably it's about Aaron Gordon. Probably it's the fatigue. Because remember, back in the days, he is a slow starter. Maybe
Mhm.
he doesn't like this months so
True
much.
story.
That's why it's slowing down. So again,
True story.
we really need to monitor this. So let's not talk.
Mhm.
Let's now talk about one of the youngest, most exciting team for me in the NBA. Man,
Ah,
OKC is really stuck if they get like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green.
I
They
hate
will be
OKC.
super stuck 5 years from now.
I hate OKC. They have so many draft picks. So even if they don't get Cade Cunningham with that first pick, they could literally be like, we'll give you 7 first-round picks for your first-round pick and still have 10 left. Like, it's insane the amount of draft capital they have. And then I'm an Al Horford roster. I have Al Horford in like 2 leagues. They just said, you're not playing for the rest of the season. They didn't even trade him. They just literally, like, I thought once they got past the trade thing, I was like, okay, maybe I got 2 or 3 weeks left where they'll still keep Horford in and eventually cut him. Nope. They just went, yeah, we'll work on doing a buyout or a trade for you in the offseason, but you're done for the rest of the year. And then SGA has the foot injury. I think it was like plantar fasciitis. I don't remember exactly, but I have him on my team.
That foot injury. I
Yeah.
think personally, it's definitely real. But personally, I think the whole management was thinking,
I don't know.
now we have a reason.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? I don't know if he comes back for the rest of the season. I have him on one of my main teams, so this absolutely stinks because I just honestly don't think they bring him back. But the Thunder are technically only 3 games out of the final play-in spot. Yes, they have they're 20 and 28, so they're 7 games ahead of the Rockets for the 14th spot for the final 2 spots between the Rockets and Timberwolves. So they won't be that low. And they're only 2 wins behind the Kings, 3 wins behind the Warriors and the Grizzlies. So it's insane that they might even make the playoffs of the play-in. Like, they're tanking and still doing that good with all these picks. I think the Thunder are the definition. They're running a masterclass on how to run an NBA franchise. And I'm worried about SGA because, like you said, it feels like they want to tank. So why would they bring him back? They don't want to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
like, we're winning too much.
SGA is really getting those tank violation because, to be honest, low key, SGA is a good damn player.
Yeah.
Do you see how chill he is when he plays? You don't see that usually in young stars. He's super chill to the point that he probably learned a lot from Gallinari and Chris Paul because those 2 vets are really great scorers. To be honest, you find several games wherein OKC play seriously. They really, really played good to the point that even those top teams are really having a hard time. Even Denver had a hard time with OKC, especially with SGA playing. Then you have Pokusevski. I really like Pokusevski because I call him Mr. One of One because you can see that 7-footer play a guard type of plays. You have Jokic, but he's big. But Pokusevski is like an SG with a 7 wingspan, And you have also Moses Brown, which is really
great.
unleashed right now. You have Theo Maledon, a low-key, solid point guard. They have V. McKellough from Detroit, which is a very good 3-point shooter. And I also the moment he was traded, I told everyone, you know what, guys, this was a low-key trade. I really think OKC is really smart because they understand that they need a shooter. They doesn't have any shooter. The best shooter they have before Svi was Pokusevski, which is still raw. You have Muscala and Al Horford. I don't trust Dort's outside shooting yet. SGA, yeah, he could, but I don't think he will do that most of the time. And there's a lot of players in the OKC that can make plays. You have Isaiah Roby. I mean, wow, OKC is super stacked.
Yeah, I think OKC make the Rockets look so bad because they don't like they have players that want to leave and boom, like even the Westbrook trade. I feel like they got more for Westbrook than Houston got for Westbrook. I feel like they got more for Westbrook than Houston got for Harden. The Harden deal for Houston was horrible. How do you give up on Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen and instead take nothing? All you got are bad pick swaps. So I think that OKC, their GM is fantastic, and like you said, they're stacked. They have a lot of young players with great skill sets and unique skill sets, and they have tons of draft capital so that when they want to make a move and they're finally ready to go, and you have a guy like SGA, and then you get another pick that they'll probably get this season who'll be pretty good, and then you move up a guy like Horford for probably like some more picks, and then you could probably package a couple of deals and get two top 5 picks in this draft this year if you're OKC and they want to move that way. But their GM has been phenomenal. I think if you're an OKC fan, you got to trust in them. If you're in a fantasy owner, you have to anticipate the tank there. I don't think SGA comes back.
Definitely. And to be honest, next year, if they want to win, they can go straight get Bradley Beal or whichever good player that they have. And you know also what? Those players will definitely love to play with OKC because they are darn good.
Or it could go the other way. And they could trade SGA with the Al Horford and just get more picks. Oh, New York, you're going to give us your 2 first-round picks for Al Horford and SGA? Let's do it. And I think that would be a great move on both. Well, at least for the Knicks, because you put an SGA and an Al Horford with Tibbs. My God, that'd be great because we finally have a big that could space the floor. You could shoot. I think Horford is a great veteran presence. I think he's a good playmaker. I think that he's a solid guy on a team that's trying to win. And SGA, like you said, he's so smooth. He spent so much time with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul really took him under his wing. And you see that it paid dividends, especially in the season before Paul was traded to Houston. He was really, I'm not Houston, to Phoenix. He was really good for that team. And that team, I didn't even think they would make the playoffs. And they made the playoffs with 3 guards. They ran Schroeder, they ran Paul, and they ran SGA. And they were running all 3 at the same time. So they have a great eye for talent there in OKC.
Definitely. And to be honest, bro, Al Horford for me was the best center available in this trade deadline.
Yeah.
The only thing that blocked his way was the contract. But other than that, he should have been straight up the best center available.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude is really like a wine. Getting better.
He would be so perfect with the Lakers. Because he's opened the floor up for those guys. He could be a complimentary playmaker to LeBron, and he can knock down the 3. So I could definitely see the Lakers making a move for him maybe in the offseason because what they did with their front court now isn't working.
Sam Presti has super magic hands, turning those contracts into gold. The CP3 contract that was immovable per se, but was moved. And now I don't think Horford's contract is that too much so big of a deal right now. I mean, if I want to win, I don't think any team would think twice to get that contract.
And they could probably just throw a pick with it too, so the other team can take the money. They have 17 picks.
Right?
Give a couple second rounders, give a late first rounder that's not that good. And you move that contract off, and you're happy. But I agree. Sam Presti, he makes contracts that seem like the Westbrook. No one thought Westbrook could be traded, and they did it, and they got a decent haul because they got Chris Paul back, who got them another haul, which got them another haul. So they just kept, doing it because when they got, Danny Green, it was why would you get Danny Green? Boom, they moved Danny Green right over to Philly, and they get some more prospects and stuff. So these guys are phenomenal. They're just phenomenal.
Exactly. Well, we have to talk about some phenomenal things right now. GS but not W. So have you watched the game earlier? I understand that Draymond didn't play. I understand that Curry didn't play. But being down 50 at this point of the season is really, really hard for the GSW fans. They're really blaming Kerr probably not playing Wiseman. But personally, I don't think Wiseman would be the answer. I think it's more of a team effort right now. Probably, really didn't fit GSW well. Wiseman is a good prospect, but he's still super raw right now. I don't think they should really expect so much from Wiseman. What they need is Draymond and Curry to be back because that's the only thing that I believe that could salvage this season right now.
And to be honest, that the Warriors right now, they are 3 games out of the 7th spot.
Yeah.
But they're 2 games out of the 12th spot. So they're in that perfect balance of they could be in it or they could be out of it in a streak. like one streak. And right now, I mean, when you look at the Warriors, they're 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 2 in a row. Like you said, Green and Curry are hurt. They got blown out they were down by over 50 points to the Toronto Raptors, who've been struggling all season to score, and they're
Without
lining it
Fred
up.
VanVleet.
Yeah, like I think that was Siakam's best game all season. I'm sitting there like, Pascal, you're back. I almost traded you 2 weeks ago. Thank God that got vetoed. And then OG Anunoby's looking good. So, and then Fred VanVleet and Lowry are out. So, I think that loss to the Warriors almost makes me think, like, why wouldn't they tank? Like, the Warriors, I think, should be almost with that Pelicans mind state where you don't have Clay yet. You have a super raw Wiseman. You have some pieces that really don't fit. I don't see them, necessarily making it, because you have the Kings who are 1 game back. You have the Pelicans who are 2 games back. I see them sliding out of the playoffs, and I think that would be the best move for them. Get some more, young pieces, make the moves that you need to make in order to surround your guys. But next season, they'll be so much better with Wiseman having a full season under his belt and an off season to work on some stuff. You'll have Klay Thompson back, who's a massive, player for that rotation. And I think that Draymond has really started to show that he's so valuable to the Warriors, where people thought that before you might be able to just let him go and sign someone else and not pay him the money. I think he's the heartbeat of that team.
I mean, Draymond is even playing well while giving Wiseman that,
Coaching.
sort of like a teacher mentor type of player. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
And also, I also think that um, I was supposed to post this because GSW, like what I've said, is like polarizing right now. I mean, if you own Curry, you might think that, hey, Curry will definitely need to play for them to, go back and play in that play in tournament. But you also think that what if they tank? They might sit Curry out. So
Yeah.
you have this sort of like a decision to
Yeah.
what to do. If you have still a window for a trade deadline, i- i- just for the sake of peace of mind, once Curry played 1 game with a solid, performance, maybe you sell him high. It won't hurt you. You'll definitely get sort of like a first rounder value out of Curry. But at least you have a peace of mind that once JSW might go tank mode, you're free of that
Right.
risk of having Curry. Also, if you own Wiseman, you have to like this position. I understand how high and how Curry and Kerr has been talking about Wiseman for quite some time. Maybe this is the time. Like what you've said, he needs that full season belt for his career to be like playable next season. Because at least for this season, he has been playing really, really sort of high schoolish. Because as much as people love him, he is not providing that positive rating once he's on the floor. He's actually a good shot blocker, but doesn't play good defense. It's really hard for GSW to play him while they want to win. So that's the reason why Draymond is getting a lot of minutes because he's that glue guy.
Yep.
He facilitates offense, but he also facilitates defense. That's how valuable Draymond is.
He's
But
their
as of the
quarterback.
moment,
He's the guy. He sets them up so well, like on the defense and the offense, like you said. He sees the game almost like a play ahead of a lot of other players. Like he understands where the rotations are, and to your point on Wiseman in his final college season, I think his only college season, played like 1 or 2 games and then left to get ready for the NBA. So we didn't even get that college time in versus those type of more, seasoned vet. Like you're not facing high schoolers now. You're facing kids that are in college and on scholarship, which is a level up on competition. So I think that definitely hurt him. And I think he's going to need a full off season. He's going to need to put in a lot of work in his body. He's need to get stronger. He's going to need to get more agile. And he's going to need a guy like Draymond in his ear, like you said, kind of coaching him up on like, hey, you are a good shot blocker. Yes, your raw talent is great, but if you don't get the cerebral part where you understand what players are doing, you won't be able to be that good because Draymond is not the most physically gifted player, but he's just so smart, and that's why he's able to be so good.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I thought that Golden State will like do a good trade. Getting Lonzo Ball was a good move because it's sort of like, they can actually play for contention if they want, and probably have someone that could bring that fast pace that they had, because they lack defense, and they also lack that other playmaking chores aside from Draymond. Definitely Curry needs that space. Definitely Curry needs to score, because as you can see, whenever Curry doesn't score, they doesn't have anyone who shoots. Well, Uber tried his best, but I
Oubre
mean,
is gone next season.
it,
That one dude that will not be back.
yeah, I mean, Wiggins is someone that for me tried to be that sort of like, filled in the KD
Yep.
spot as a scorer. He was a good defender at some point. He in fantasy is giving a lot of blocks, but
Mhm.
it's still lacking. There's
Yeah.
there's something different. I think we should see that next season with Clay healthy, and probably some change in
Yep.
players. Um, they went all in with Wiseman. I really thought that they will be getting Lamelo Ball with that pick.
I do agree though with the Wiseman pick from the mere standpoint of he's everything that they're not. Like he's a big who could, potentially what you see is a rebounding guy. He has some decent ability to put on the floor. He should be able to shoot in the NBA. I think that for him, and I think we see it a lot with a guy like Obi Toppin as well here in New York, who probably he won College Player of the Year. If he would have had a NCAA tournament, would have really got to show off his skills. But he's been a slow developer as well. And I think for these big men, because of the way the game is, it takes them a little bit of time for them to get used to the speed of the game, what's going on, and what they have to do. So I do think, given time, he's going to fit in. And then you have to understand that with Klay Thompson coming back, they'll have Klay, they'll have Draymond, and they'll have Steph. So putting a guy like Wiseman complements them so well that if you do get a guy like LaMelo, like how do you really like? I'm not saying it wouldn't have worked, but he kind of like is more of yes, he'll take the but he'll create, but he'll take the ball out of Steph's hands, and then now Steph's become more of a spot up shooter, and then instead of a pick and roll creative type guy, or Draymond Green now is going to be forced to become more of a spot up shooter because now boom, the offense is running through LaMelo, and as a Knicks fan, I was so happy that they didn't get Lonzo because I wanted Lonzo on the Knicks so bad. That's the one name that the Knicks, I feel like, and the offseason have to go after and get for everything you said. He's a great playmaker for others. He's good on the defensive end. He has size. His three-point shooting has drastically increased over the last couple of years. I think that Lonzo is one of the most underrated players now. And people don't forget, he's 24 years old. He's young. He hasn't hit his physical. 26 to 27 is when you say the prime, the physical prime for players usually hits in. So he's yet to even hit that yet.
Agree. Probably the reason why I thought getting Lamelo was the best option for GSW. Well, number one, last year's draft or this season's draft wasn't that good. So I was thinking it's the best thing to do to flip that switch, because Weissman has that mystery type of
Yeah,
package, but getting Lamelo with, I mean, helping some teams to have that good marketing with
Mhm.
the way he brings with getting those fans.
Sure.
I think Lamelo could have been a good trade chip that probably GSW would have used to swing and get a solid acquisition and run for a contention for this season. I just thought of that.
No, I
The
think that's a really valid point, and I think that one thing for Lamelo is that much like Wiseman, there was a lot of questions around him because he played overseas, and when he played overseas, he wasn't like the best. He didn't dominate. He had his flashes. I think when he went to the Australian team is when he really started to show off. But a lot of people said that people think that LaMelo may have tried to force himself to Charlotte at 3. and didn't really go as hard in some of those workouts and some of those things because he did want to end up with the Hornets and with Michael at 3. Because when you think about it, like you said, if he's in Golden State, he's more than likely a trade chip to go to another team to be a part of a package because they would be more in a win now mode. Or it'd be a situation where he'd be playing behind the Steph Curry, whereas even if he went to the Wolves,
Wolves.
you have D'Lo and then you have Cat. So it's kind of like a situation also where he's not going to be the brightest star and he's going to be behind guys that are going to play, make, and take the ball. When he goes to the Hornets, he was the number 1 guy and they had just gotten Hayward, but Hayward had already showed that he works great with the young guys and he's willing to give up his shots. So, I mean, I also think that maybe Ball had a little bit to do with his sliding as well, and then he probably didn't show off the full package like that so he can end up with the Michael because, I mean, as we hear, he's already calling Michael Unk. That's Unk. So, I think they have a good relationship, and I think that's actually probably the best spot for him as much as I would have loved him on the Knicks. I think that's a great spot because he doesn't have the pressure of a big market like, New York or LA, and he has the freedom to do a lot. And he can be that star,
Yeah.
like you said, that's going to sell tickets.
I mean, for me, Lamelo Ball was a gift from heaven to Michael Jordan. It's
Yeah.
his opportunity to redeem himself as a GM.
Yep. Yeah, he couldn't pass on LaMelo.
Yeah, definitely. I think Lamelo going lower than 3 is definitely not gonna happen.
No.
Now let's talk about one of the for me one of the steals in this draft, Jaden McDaniels at Timberwolves. To be honest, I'm starting to think that Jaden McDaniels could have a better career than Anthony Edwards. Uh, Probably not in terms of scoring and all, but
Oh,
looking how what Jaden offers in the table, he is actually bringing something that is actually um in need now in the NBA. Someone who is big, agile, can shoot the three and can also defend. He's sort of like a Jonathan Isaac 2.0 for me. What can you say about this Jaden dude back in the mini?
well, I mean, with Jaden McDaniels, I've seen a lot of hype around the kid because, like you said, he's a big. He could space the floor. He's getting two and a half with 2 threes per game over the last 2 weeks just alone, while shooting 53% from the field and 1.3 blocks. And his turnovers are super low. He's the definition of a high upside, super efficient player. He's not going to destroy the points categories or have the most rebounds, but all around, he's going to be an efficient, effective player. He hits the 3 ball, he gets you blocks, he gets you assists, and he's been averaging, a decent playing time over his last a couple of games, 21, 36, 38, 36, 33, 29. So he's getting minutes and he's getting his threes because in all of those games, he's hit at least 1 3. Usually he's hitting about 2 threes per game. So I definitely think that this kid is, like you said, showing a lot of upside. I think he has a lot of potential. And especially because he's only rostered in less than 40% or about 40% in Yahoo. I think that as we're getting close to the playoffs, I think that's a great pickup and a great name to be talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Something that everyone should understand is he doesn't have that offensive package in his game as of the moment.
Mhm.
Thing is, especially in Dynasty and Keeper, uh, Mini's new coach is a offensive tactician. That is why Anthony Edwards will bloom, Beasley will bloom, and Cat will bloom in the future. So you're gonna have some kind of hold your horses with Jaden McDaniels in terms of scoring. But luckily for us, he usually contributes across the board. So that's something to think about. So now we're gonna go and close the episode with some questions. So this is the part wherein I usually ask my guests so some hot takes, probably any topic that you want to talk about before we end the episode. So let's start from you, bro.
Sure. I mean, I think that um, I don't know if it's necessarily a hot take, but I really think that the Denver Nuggets could be the team that comes out of the Western Conference this season with the way they're set up right now. You have Joker, you have Murray, you have the trade for Gordon, like we touched on earlier, filling in for Grant. And then you still have Michael Porter Jr., who I think is finally blossoming into the player that we all had thought he could be. And if we saw the last couple of seasons, they have been one of the top teams in the West. Always they get pretty far, but they never get over the hump. And I think with the injuries that we're seeing in LA, that's going to hinder them. And I think that they already showed they could take care of the Clippers. So I think that, the Nuggets might be the team that actually comes out of the Western Conference. And I would love to see the Nuggets versus the Nets. I think that would be such a good series.
Yeah, nice. I love that take, and I also want to that to happen because, like what I've said earlier, I think this is one of those seasons wherein there's no clear cut top seed across
Yep.
the whole NBA. I mean, there's a lot of
Yep.
potential. East
Yep.
definitely improved, but Lakers is Lakers, but I don't think they're that strong not to be, not to lose because they were against Miami, who
Yeah.
everybody didn't expect to go to the finals, and I really give Miami props, but I think that's the last time wherein they will have a great chance to win the championship, at least as of the moment, especially
Mhm.
on how Brooklyn improved, Philly
Yep.
improved, Denver improved. I think that was their best chance. So that's why it's really sad not to see Dragic play last season. I mean, that
Yeah.
could have been a
And Bam.
50-50
Yeah,
play.
Bam missed the beginning too, and I think that really hurt them a lot. Not having Bam off the bat because he was playing so
Yeah,
well for them.
agree. So
Mhm.
for me, I'm gonna go with this is also not a hot take, but more of like a discussion. I want to give a shout out to the Portland Blazers. For me, it's one of the dark horses in the Western Conference. One of the things that I love, or one of the move that I love, is now they're looking at Rondae Hollis Jefferson. This is one example of a good franchise
Mhm.
that knows what they need,
Mhm.
that knows what good players offer. I was surprised that there were no teams that is getting Ronnie Hollis Jefferson. I understand he's not that the star of a player, but he's a really good defender. I thought Brooklyn would pick him up, especially that he played back in Brooklyn.
Mhm.
I was surprised that Minnesota waived him because I would. It's really arguable that he is better than several guys there. So I really admire how Portland build their team. They now got three solid defenders. If they will get Ronnie Hollis Jefferson, they have Rocco, they have Derek Jones Jr. and they now have Ronnie Hollis Jefferson.
Yep.
Nurkic is back, CJ is back. They have Norman Powell, which is for me has a more dynamic role and has more to offer than Gary Trent Jr. So
Mhm.
for me, Portland Blazers is a dark horse. Damian Lillard should be in the talks for MVP as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my shout out for
Yeah.
this episode.
And I love the Blazers team. I thought the Blazers team were gonna. I thought they had the possibility to really upset the Lakers last season because they were going in
Yeah,
so hot, and the Lakers didn't have Rondo. So I definitely was anticipating that, and I think that that trade for Norman Powell really went under the radar. But I think that's such a good move for them because Powell is a good wing defender, and if you look at what he was doing in the season, he was shooting lights out from three,
exactly.
shooting like
Super efficient.
45% and hitting like 4 or 5 threes a game. So I think with that team being able to space the floor so well and being able to defend on a two-way, I think Norman Powell is going to be a great fit. More than likely, they're probably going to re-sign him, and that's why they traded Gary Trent because they both were free agents. And it's kind of like, well, you dealt Gary Trent for Norman Powell. Like, what are you really getting there? And I really do think that Norman Powell is a huge step up. And I think he's going to be someone that I'm really going to be watching, not only because I have him on a fantasy team, but because I think that he's a really good player with that team because he opens up the floor for everyone with that 3-point shooting.
Yeah, and the main difference with Powell and Trent as well, because Powell can somehow do some playmaking chores.
Yeah.
Powell can penetrate, so it's something that Garrett Trent does not have yet in his
Mhm.
arsenal. So, like what I've said, it was a low key solid move.
Yep.
So, Mr. Taco, now that we're in the end of the part of
Sure.
the episode, I'm gonna give you the floor to
Yeah.
tell something about what you do and invite our friends to check
Sure.
your show because it was really fun episode tonight. I would love to
Absolutely.
for you to come back again, and I hope you also
Absolutely.
had fun.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I love talking basketball. I love talking sports. I love what you're doing with your page and your group. I think that's super awesome. I saw you had made a post in one of the fantasy basketball groups that we're in with your podcast, and I definitely listened to it. I thought it's super awesome. We haven't made it to iTunes and Spotify yet, but we're trying to go there. For fantasy basketball, usually I do this week in fantasy basketball, kind of like a quick catch up of some of the things in the player stats for the week. And I also do a lot of waiver wire type pickup moves where I'm talking about players that are owned in 50% or less of leagues, trying to give you guys some help for the playoffs. I personally do the show live. I'm going to be doing it live going forward on either Mondays or Tuesdays for the fantasy basketball, so people can ask questions as they get their rosters ready for the playoffs. We also you can follow us at Instagram, the Daily Sporting. That's also the same name of our website, which we're working on finishing up. We're gonna have a lot of content for fantasy sports in general, fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball, fantasy football. We do mock drafts, we do waiver wire pickups, we do overall strategy ideas, and we open the floor up to question and answer. So like in football, I would always do Sundays where you get questions about your lineups, you can come in and ask them before time. We're trying to get something similar for basketball, and baseball just started, but we're going to have a lot of fantasy baseball content coming up soon as I can figure out a nice schedule for everything.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
So yeah, thank you so much for dropping by. I really appreciate it, and I hope you'll be back some
absolutely.
other episodes because I really loved discussing and talking about stuff with you. And
Absolutely.
I'll definitely know that our supporters here will definitely support you as well because they've really learned more about you, what you offer in the table, and we really learned a lot.
Yeah, and I look forward to supporting you and your community as well. And I joined your group as well. So also if they have any questions, I don't mind answering them in that group too. So if any of your people have any questions about maybe some free agent pickups or some thoughts, I'm also there for them as well. I appreciate you having me on, and like I said with my show, I'd love to have you on as well so we could discuss some of these things as well. I think it was a great conversation about some great topics, and I definitely had a lot of fun.
Great, great. And we'll also schedule that full English version of Q&A because we usually do it weekly. So probably
Sure.
I'm thinking if we can do it twice, wherein you come in part of the day
Yeah.
and then end of the week I'll do the usual Filipino
Yeah. Or
content.
even
So
if you
yeah,
if you do your first half in it, or and I'll come in for the second half of your show, whatever works for you. I'll let you decide that. But I'm down to help your community and help you guys out any way that I can.
great, great. Thank you so much. So yeah, that's to wrap up our show. Again, this is Fantasy Basketball PH, our Filipino brand of fantasy basketball. Like, subscribe, follow, share, and comment. Let's also support Mr. Taco and his show, and we definitely had a great time tonight, guys. And we ha- we learned a lot and different perspectives and thoughts about the whole league. And imagine we only talked about several teams. Imagine what we could have gotten if we talked about the whole 30 teams. So we're looking forward to probably one episode talking about that. Probably it would take like a whole day of talking because both of us are really having fun right here. And I hope
Sure.
you're having fun in your probably watching YouTube or listening at Spotify or probably other mediums that we have here in Fantasy Basketball PH. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Mr. Taco. This is your fantasy papi, Papi Roy, saying goodbye and have fun. Let's win some fantasy basketball. Bye bye.